Hi, DM Kurt here with the Tal'Darai Guide, and I'm going to be using this as a reference soon. The purpose of this video is to talk about leveling up existing magic items in your D&D game. So one thing we used to have a problem with in, say, first, second, heck, even fifth edition, is when characters would find a magical item of minor importance, a +1 dagger, a +1 sword, +1 suit of armor, early in their careers, and eventually, later in their careers, we have to figure, okay, they find a +2 sword, dagger, or piece of armor. Well, what do they do with the old one? Well, they just dump it to the wayside. That that seems kind of anticlimactic for somebody made a magical item. It's an item with special properties and powers, and you're just going to cross it off your character sheet of, I don't need this anymore. This is kind of junk because I have better. Well, the possibility is leveling up the existing items rather than giving new ones out. So in the Tal'Darai Guide and in the follow-up, the Wildemount book, Mr. Matt Mercer decides to put in the Vestiges of Divergence. Magical items which start out in one state, being minor items, and then over time leveling up with them. I used something like this in my games before I got these books, which kind of say, hey, let's do the same thing, except even in a more interesting manner, I would think. So we had a paladin, and I thought, wow, it would be really cool if this paladin ended up with a holy sword. Okay, look up the holy swords, +3 weapon, does all kind of neat stuff, extra radiant damage against undead and whatnot. Okay, cool. But he started out as a level 1 character with an old sword that he'd had back when he was a fighter. Well, when the paladin used his sword for Divine Smite after the first couple times, I handed him an index card. And the index card said, okay, your long sword is now a +0 magical sword. Doesn't give you any bonuses, but counts as magical for the purposes of what is resistant to its damage. Because in 5th edition, there are some things that take half damage versus non-magical weapons. Well, your sword doesn't give you any bonuses, but it defeats that resistance. And soon thereafter, he used his sword for Divine Smite against some more evil creatures. Okay, now it's an actual +1 sword. And the point was, every time he went up some levels, and in those levels had used it for Divine Smite, that divine radiant energy flowing through him from his divine spells, some of it would linger in a sword and eventually enchant it. And eventually, when he was of an appropriate level, it would be that +3 holy sword. Well, we only got so far before that player left the gaming group. But that was a way of doing it. I just want to take that opportunity to throw in the possibility of leveling up existing magic items, which you can do. I've done it in my current campaign where I've just had everybody at the table have one really cool item that just seems to every now and then get a little more powerful as they level up and they've used it. And it can't be something that's just been sitting in the back. It has to be something they've actually used. It makes the most sense when it's a spellcaster and you know that arcane energies are flowing back and forth. But it also makes sense if it's just a minor magic item and it's being used. Maybe it came from somewhere. Maybe it had a history that your character doesn't even know it had. And this also gets rid of the whole idea of having junk magic items, because magical items, in my opinion, should be impressive and cool and special. So that's just DM Kurt's opinion, and thought I might throw it out there. I hope it helps your game. Good night, adventurers. Have a good one.